Welcome to what has just become a wet Nürburgring. It's our pre-qualifying session for the final round of the Blancpain Endurance Series. It's the iRacing.com GT500. And everybody went pouring out on a nice dry road with 90 minutes of track ahead of them. And then the rain fell. And 51 Ferrari, the Duncan Cameron, Matt Griffin car has slithered off the road. It needs retrieval, but also track conditions have deteriorated. And so everybody was heading for the pit lane anyway to go onto wet tyres. The Ferrari in question has been brought back out of the gravel, but now the circuit needs sweeping as well. So it is a session that is still effectively with the clock ticking away into the 90 minutes, so limited track running available for the drivers. But it's typical Nürburgring weather, this, isn't it? And you never know what tomorrow might bring. The forecast is not exactly a rosy one for tomorrow. As ever, David Addison and John Watson trackside, sheltering from the rain. Not that it normally rains here at the Nürburgring, John, it's just a little precipitation.
Well, welcome to autumn at Nürburgring. There we see it. You get 4 seasons in 1 minute. And that's what we've been having here throughout Saturday at the Nürburgring. Rain, skies clearing up, blue, temperature falling off a cliff, then it rises up again. And, I mean, part of the joy and the pleasure of racing here is you've got things you cannot control, amongst other things you can't control, but that's part of the nature of this racetrack at this time of year. And everybody went out, 3 minutes, done one installation lap, back into the pits again. Engineers, tyre probes, checking tyre pressures. And those poor people, those winners in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, having to stand on the podium getting drenched. I didn't even see any of the girls that normally were out there. They normally hand the trophies over. Where were they? Hiding away.
Now, this weekend, we've got not only a great race in prospect, but we've also got championships to be decided. There's the points permutations we'll worry about a bit later, maybe, as well as the race. But if you factor in the race, the weather, the championship, everybody, pit lane, commentary box, wherever, are going to have an awful lot to look at. It promises to be a great way to end the season.
Well, we're going to see a little bit of practice now. The track has gone green again. The track is saturated. It's coming down into turn 1. And we've still got to get into that 1.25 hours of qualifying on Sunday morning at 8:30. And you mentioned fog. We got, I mean, what are you going to learn here today? I mean, obviously people have got to go out in these adverse conditions because we do not know with precise forecasting what is going to be the weather come Sunday afternoon. But one thing is clear. Hail, snow, rain, sunshine, whatever, it'll be a 3-hour race.
That's true, very true indeed. Might have the odd safety car, certainly have lots of pit stops, have lots of drama. Going back to this point about why this session has perhaps extra importance, just hypothetically, if, like last year, the day dawned really foggy, and you can see how wet it is now and how the rain hangs in the air, if the weather conditions tomorrow morning were so bad that you couldn't run qualifying at all, the grid would be based on the times at the end of this session. So it does have some extra value, potentially.
Yes, indeed. I think that's a valid point, and I'm sure most of the more switched-on people in the pit lane are fully aware of that. But frankly, if the weather's going to be as variable as we anticipate, I don't think it really matters where you start, because there's going to be so many elements which are beyond your control. I'm just watching that, I mean, an amazing camera looking backwards.
Yeah.
And look at the rubbish that's being just from the right or the left front. It's so uncertain that if you started at the back, almost like Jack Eakes at Le Mans 1969, he decided to walk across in that Le Mans start and he won the race. So I think it's one of these events, if the weather is going to be so dramatically changeable, which it looks like it will be, and it's going to put a load of stress, pressure or whatever on the teams, the drivers, especially those that are doing the calculations. We're going to work out the strategies. The weather forecasters in the pit lane will be doing their bit, but it is so difficult in this part of Germany. We're slightly higher above sea level, about 500, 600 meters above sea level, and all the trees around here just act like a magnet to anything that's passing by like a cloud. And well, there you see it now. So go out, do your laps, do your homework. Really, it is about homework now. And in the meantime, if you get an opportunity to get a reasonably clear lap, or a lap where you've got a clearish drying line, and nobody else is trying to dive bomb you to get that line, you might come out of it reasonably good. With the thought that Sunday morning's times could possibly be irrelevant.
It's a fair point. There you can see number 4 Audi, which is the car that's operated by WRT, It's driven by Max Kobold, Sascha Botterman, Peter Schothorst. And we've got a yellow flag in the first sector, so I'm afraid that someone has slithered off the road. The team's wanting to get homework, as John Watson rightly says, but you get the feeling on occasions they're going to be frustrated by others dropping off the road. Thankfully, that yellow flag hasn't lasted for very long, but you know, they lost about 10 minutes of running through that one red flag alone.
Yes, and remember, this is a 55 or so car field in what is, in relative terms, a shortish circuit. It's not one of these monsters, you know, not like Spa-Francorchamps where 55 cars can kind of blend into the background. This is 5.1 kilometres around, just 2.75 miles around. A lot of cars, and of course, a lot of the corners are relatively slow corners. They're not maybe like Silverstone, open, fast corners where you can get a little bit of spreading of the cars. So I suspect, looking back to last year, we're going to see lots of big groups of cars almost tripping over one another, as they did, in fact, in the first, what they are, of the 6-hour event last year, they were doing.
That's right. Yes, last year it was very wet and we had lots of damage, and it was a 6-hour race last year. We go back to the conventional 3-hour format, and therefore, as far as the championships are concerned, with the teams in all the categories up for grabs, plus drivers in Pro and drivers in Am, then there are fewer points on offer for those determined to try to take. Pro Am already won, don't forget, because Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron won that at Spa. And Matt said to me yesterday, he didn't really feel like we'd won a championship, he said, because we got to the podium, you know, second in class in the race, and all you want to do is go away and have some sleep. You don't really feel like, well, hey, I've won a championship, but they did win it there.
And I tell you what, he wasn't the only one felt like that. By the time you get through the podium ceremonies in Spa, I mean, you probably want to have your dinner. I mean, it just was never ending, and it was you know, a tough race this year.
Yeah.
A lot of intensity all the way through 24 hours, weather at the start, and then, of course, that monumental battle with Audi and BMW. So here we are at that final round. Of course, you've got to go back to Monza, and isn't it really great news to see that the Lamborghini that won the race has now been reinstated?
It is. It's a shame that there was ever the problem about it, because it took away the story, didn't it? It gave you another story of out and another car in. But yes, it is good that Lamborghini has had its first win. A fun fact of the day is that every class through every race has had a different winner. Nobody has won twice in any of the categories, and we haven't had an Audi win in the Endurance Series outright all year.
Well, I think for the viewer or for the audience, they want variety. They want to see multiple winners. They may be in a Ferrari, as it was initially, we believe, what had happened at Monza. Not only did they win the race outright, but they won the Pro-Am category.
Yeah.
And that's now going to be altered, new regulations coming out for 2016. So in terms of, particularly in the podium procedures, so it will be, the podium will be the overall first, second and third, and then all the other categories will then do their podiums following that. So unpredictable. And I mean, well, where are the cars?
I mean, that is partly the gloom, it's partly the spray hanging in the air, and yet, if we have a look above the sort of back part of the circuit, there's a little tiny break in the cloud.
There is. There's actually a couple of blue patches out there, but you know, that is not exactly over the racetrack. And what is over the racetrack is this murk and gloom, and you know, difficult for drivers. So every corner you come to on every lap is probably different in terms of their feel that you get. Levels of dampness or wetness could be either do change as quickly as one lap.
Now there's the fastest car in the session into the pit lane, Lawrence Vanthoor. Peter Schothorst in the number 4 round, who we looked at a while ago. He's just done the best of anybody in the middle sector. Very nice new livery on the Sean Walkinshaw Nissan, just went through shot.
It's also got a new number.
Yes, 173.
Do you know why?
No.
Because it's got a new entrant.
Which is something like Progress Motorsport.
Always evolving
Motorsport.
Who?
Tell me more.
Well, they were the entrance for the car at Portimao a fortnight ago in well, round 5 of the Blancpain Sprint Championship, and that's just a change of let's say management of the car, but because it's effectively a new entrant, they had to have a new number, so it's now 173 rather than 73.
And why has Bentley number 8 swapped to number 31?
I haven't found that out. Now, I did speak to Alex, the team principal, and we were talking about things probably more important to us, you know, secret squirrel stuff.
Oh, I see.
Stuff you can't really talk about. Don't want to be heard talking about it, especially in the press room.
1929.
Oh, I see.
Bentley won the 500-mile race at Brooklands.
Was that a 4.5 litre?
It was. And
supercharged?
And it carried number 31. And that's
Really?
why they've gone with that number.
Goodness
to
me.
try to see if the gods will smile on them.
And I assume it's in the same colours the car won with, which would be BRG.
It's still in current M Sport livery. Only the number has changed.
Well, it's a wonderful gesture.
It is. And it's a nice nod to the history of Bentley
Absolutely,
as well.
and I think the heritage of a mark like Bentley, people probably are not really aware of the history that Bentley had, back 80 odd years ago when they were really a leading team in international motorsport.
Jack Barclay and Frank Clement were the drivers.
Well, I mean, the name is still above the door amongst many West End showrooms in London.
Yeah.
London, Great Britain, that is.
Now, there is the aforementioned Nissan with the Bob Neville run car just up the road ahead of it. And although we're looking at the Sean Walkinshaw car, don't forget that 23 Nissan could win the Pro Cup outright. So that's another one to keep an eye to. But fourth at the moment is Craig Dolby. It's been good to see Craig racing this year in GTs because he's another of those very good Brits that's been rather forgotten about after Super League fizzled out.
Yeah, I mean, Craig's found himself into GT racing like many drivers who've rather lost their way in single-seater racing. Got a lot of natural speed, a lot of experience, particularly in big, heavy single-seaters. So that's a really good sort of benchmark for Sean Walkinshaw, who's come from the other end of single-seater racing, lightweight, Formula 3 and other single-seater formulas. So Craig is able to act as, in a way, a pathfinder for Sean Walkinshaw to find his feet and direction in a powerful... Remember, this is a turbocharged V6 Nissan engine. Unlike a lot of the other cars in Blancpain Endurance or Sprint, which are naturally aspirated. And again, I mean, not in the case of Sean, but in the case of other amateur drivers, they're just a little bit of information picked up in the press room again, is that they find it easier to drive naturally aspirated engine cars rather than as the Bentley is or as the Nissan is, where they're turbocharging. It's the way the turbocharger comes in. There's so much torque that it's so easy to literally spin up the rear tires, and of course by doing that, particularly in these kind of conditions, you can get yourself into a bit of trouble.
Indeed so. This is the works car, if you like, run by Bob Neville's team, the Nismo car with Katsumasa Chiyo at the wheel, with Wolfgang Reip and Alex Bunker. It could win Pro Cup. Bob's team had its first win in the championship outright at Paul Ricard, a really popular result. And again, you see how it's wetter at certain parts than others here.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally the lowest part of the racetrack down at turn 7. Well, I think it's called Dunlop, I'm not sure it's Dunlop. And then the climb all the way up through this really the most challenging sequence of corners on the racetrack, turns 7 or 8 and 9. In the dry, probably if you're on a wing and a prayer, you might get it flat only with a new set of tyres. But I mean, one of those sequence of corners where you really feel this is what being a race driver is all about. Some good corners are all around, 15 of them in total on the 5.1 kilometre racetrack. Others are a little bit twiddly, and particularly the final chicane. Two versions of it. There's a very tight version and there's a slightly more open version for different categories racing in different times.
Yeah, the support cars here are using the so-called F1 version. We're using the motorcycle version, which is also used for historic cars, which is the slightly softer version, if you like, without quite the same stop-start nature to it.
Yeah, I mean, the very tight version really hammers the brakes. I mean, we've seen here in the 6-hour race last year, teams were having to change pads and, in some cases, pads and discs by making that the slightly softer entry and what you may call it the historic version. A bit like at Silverstone, where at Club Corner they don't use Vale in the same way. It's a much more naturally flowing sequence of corners, more appropriate to those sort of historic cars. These are modern cars, but of course they're much heavier, over 1,000 kilograms, 1,200 kilograms, and stopping one of those constantly on a lap where you're in traffic, not really getting your brake temperatures a chance to cool down, it just has a build-up problem of wear and sometimes heat as well.
Into the Mercedes arena, where it is very treacherous indeed. 14th fastest at the moment, number 71 Mercedes, which is the car that's got Marco Asma at the wheel. In fact, 14th in class. The Lumirank this morning was showing overall. Now it's gone back to showing class positions. So Marco Asma at the wheel of the Mercedes. And Lawrence Vantor remains the fastest at the moment.
Yeah, we got Alvaro Parent in the 59 McLaren, Von Ryan Racing, fastest second and third sectors. He's just done his 204, so whether he's going to see any further improvement on this lap or not. 209.993. That's his last flying lap, so he's still on a lap. So keep an eye on Alvaro Parent, who is the sort of go-to McLaren factory driver in the Von Ryan Racing McLaren MP. What was it? 650S,
isn't it? Yeah. Rob Bell in the sister car went off at the end of the first session.
I saw.
Tell me more.
I don't know what happened.
Oh.
I mean, somebody said, "Oh, Bell," and I think it might have been on the circuit commentary. I heard Bell and son of Derek Bell. I don't think so. Not unless Derek knows something we don't know.
But he's got a funny accent if he is anything to do with Derek.
Well, but, you know, you can make your way to different parts of the country.
That is true. We did see the car spinning, but whether he was tapped into it or it was a Rob Bell error, we didn't see. But it's not like Rob to go off, is it?
No, and I mean, what he realised is, well, the track at that point was actually dry. The grass was very wet. And slick tyres on wet grass is a recipe for whatever the nearest thing to hit is, that's what you're going to hit.
That's what he found. So he did quite a bit of damage to the orange Von Ryan McLaren. It is on track, and it's 36 that Rob is behind the wheel now to try and redeem himself. The point you made about traffic is evidence, as there the number 30 BMW is negotiated by Marco Asma. 30 is the classic and modern racing car of Pierre Hershey, Christian Kelders and Jean-Luc Blanchemin. I
mean, it's in these conditions where the pro drivers have got to really be considerate to the AMs and not sort of dive bomb them into some of the tighter corners, where probably all the AM's focus is simply, literally, tunnel visioned directly ahead of him. Probably hasn't got time to look at his mirrors, and that's the responsibility of those pro drivers, to give those AMs a little bit of slack. And the drivers know, they can see the different coloured numbers on the car, hopefully get an idea of whether that car is a competitive pro car or a gentleman driver in an AM car.
The green Ferrari just crossing the line there at the head of the shot, that was the one that John was referencing in terms of Monza, where it won Pro-Am and for a while thought it had won outright, which would have been a great story because that's the only time, and then it was taken away from the team, a Pro-Am car has won a Blancpain Endurance Series race outright. Norbert Siedler and Renat Salikov, the drivers, they've been joined by Robert Renau for this weekend. And Norbert Siedler, we know, is very, very quick indeed behind the wheel of that car, but at the moment it's only 34th. Robert Renau, new to it, former Carrera Cup racer.
Yeah, Marco Seefried is over in the States. Yeah. Taking part in the WEC event over there. So that partnership, which is a very good partnership, those Seefried and Seidler, they really are, I think, a top combination. And it was great to see this car, again, Portimao in the Blancpain Sprint, being competitive amongst all those others, the Audis and the Bentleys in particular. They were all very strong indeed. So straight line speed was hard of all that. The Bentley seemed to have that edge.
The Mercedes here, Steph Dusseldorp at the wheel of it, another car that could take the Pro Cup in the championship. It's not had a race win, but by racking up points, it's done a decent job. And the Mercedes goes well around here, lots of grunt.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relatively short race. I mean, normally we expect to see Mercedes coming through in those 24-hour events. I mean, Steph Dusseldorp was certainly a podium.
Absolutely.
Was almost a given in Spa 24, and then 2 hours out, the engine just suddenly, something went wrong. We never found out the truth of it, but it looked like there was oil and water where there shouldn't be. So again, it's a great long-distance car in a 3-hour sprint race. Well, if it can get onto the front couple of rows in qualifying and get away from the bunch that's going to be 26 rows back, then there's a very good chance that car could maintain position. But it's not quite the I call it a 3-hour race, although it's endurance. It's sort of semi-endurance, more like sprint these days. There are other vehicles which I think are in that single lap pace are going to be a little bit ahead of the Mercedes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a 3-hour sprint, although, cast your mind back all those years, the last year of the GT1 World Championship was won by Mercedes. It's not the same British Racing green livery, but I do like the number being on the radiator grille. That's a nod to the past, isn't it, on 31?
I think so. I mean, that's all the heritage. When you've got a brand like Bentley, and we've got Jaguar here, also the ML5 Jaguar, which went very well this morning, by the way. These are cars of enormous heritage, and I think that's part of what, when the public watch on television or they come to the event, and many of them are steeped in the history and anecdotes of motorsport, and particularly in the form of, would have been, I don't know whether you would have called a Bentley of 1929 or 4.5 litre Bentley a sports car or a gentleman's carriage. I'm not quite sure which it was. I know that Ettore Bugatti was very unflattering in his comments.
That's very true.
Because he built jewel-like little wonderful engine and chassis cars. But maybe the French were jealous of that British success.
Well, we don't have a Bugatti represented in the championship. We have other elements of the group, but we've got Andy Soucek pounding on 31st fastest, 36th fastest, I'll tell you a lie, because others have just gone quicker. Somebody that's in a big, big hurry is Marchi Lee, number 6 Audi, who's done an absolute best middle sector. But normally we would say, how much do you read into this? But depending on tomorrow morning's conditions, it could become more significant. And dare I suggest it's getting a little bit, I won't say better, but less horrible out there.
It's beginning to, here you can see as they come down the hill into turn 5, that there is effectively almost a bit of tarmac that isn't what I would call wet. It's not fully dry, but it's not wet, and it's probably sufficiently dry that it's not going to be helpful to a wet weather tyre. So further down the racetrack, I mean, let's look at the line in. I mean, it's how well he's taking the high liner all around that's the way normally when the track is damp or slick or greasy that you want to try and find a bit of grip around the perimeter of the corner. Then up the hill, that's where you should expect to see a drying line just limply at the point of the apex. Track still in wet conditions. Nobody would be stupid enough to go and put on a set of dry weather tyres. Having said that, undoubtedly, somebody will want to find out. Now, the reason I say this is quite important. It's to find out in the current ambient temperature, which is probably around about 12 to 14 Celsius, what the crossover point would be. So it's not ideal right now to go and put on a set of slick tyres, but you could send a driver out just to get that information, which is what, you know, a team that's well structured, well organized, and you've got somebody who, a trustworthy driver, it's just learning about the change in the track conditions and how quickly that track can go from what we saw 10 minutes ago to where it is now and to where it will be in another 5 minutes. And again, if you can use that information, maybe in the race, identical conditions to what we have right now, the point at which you go from slicks, or from wets to slicks, could be a winning move.
So last year I have it in my mind that Kevin Est was somebody that made a gamble on tyres, and it was a bit too soon, having gone off the road. Another instance of somebody not commonly making a mistake, making one when it mattered last year. Alvaro Parent, you're looking at, he's up to 3rd in the white McLaren of Davy Ryan's team, Silverstone winning team, although with the orange car, the Van Gisbergen and Bell entry. And the session now with 56 minutes to run as the road is drying and the lap times are improving, and Lawrence Vantour is the quickest and has gone yet faster, 2 minutes 8.228, and the last lap that he did had 2 purple sectors in it. Here comes Parent.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe we're anticipating what teams are going to do. Parent going over to the right side of the track because that's the wetter. He needs to preserve what he has got left on these wet weather Pirelli tyres. If he ran down the left-hand side of the track coming into turn 1, not quite dry, but a lot less, so he wants to keep the tyre temperature as cool as possible to preserve the life the tyre has. There is Lawrence Vantour,
who is in that small category of go-to top GT drivers. And you can have the discussion who is the best, but he's got to be one of the best.
We had a very interesting conversation after Portimao about track limits. And there are a couple of places here where track limits can be abused, particularly as coming into the pit lane, but particularly coming into and round the exit here of the turn 15. And you'll notice a lot of cars will run more than 2 wheels over those white and red demarcation lines. And he said, well, you know, John, in your day, the track limit was a tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a wall.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have that. We've got this space, and we're going to use it. That's the difference in the generation. And the other thing that I find very interesting, talking to a journalist colleague, Mike Jiggles, the other day, was so many drivers today, particularly younger drivers, they learn circuits on a simulator. A simulator is only a simulator. It isn't the real thing. And you can drive off track in a simulator, you don't get a penalty,
no.
And you don't skid or do anything. You just, and so many kids are now using simulators to learn racetracks, and in part of they're learning bad habits, in my view. But what they're not realizing is that actually, when you do go off track or over the track limits, there can be penalties.
Yeah, whether it's a time penalty or something far more serious, like damage to the car or damage to yourself. You're absolutely right. It is part of the modern generation. Stefan Richelme at the wheel of number 2. Now, That is another car, number 2 Audi, that could win the championship. Indeed, it comes here leading Pro Cup of Frank Stipper and Stefano Ortelli from their point scores. 63, which is the Lamborghini that Mirko Bortolotti was doing great things with earlier on in the day. How is this car getting on at the moment? The Huracan has made a real impact this year. It was the that was the quickest going back to Monza when it had the win, but only 43rd, a long way down at the moment is this car.
I mean, I don't think there's any significance in that. They may be going through a pattern of work they want to get information from. They want to maybe cycle all the drivers through in these wet conditions again. The continuity of them going through a session and going from wet to or any car changes. So the Lamborghini just sticks his nose up the inside. I mean, when they Monza, straight out of the box, Victor's project, and I'm very impressed, really impressed with what I've seen Lamborghini do.
Now there, but fastest, and it's almost tempting to get a bit flippant about it because the car's had so much bad luck, but genuinely, for this, like at Silverstone, to go strongly is a real feel-good factor in the pit lane because the team has, on a limited budget, with limited data from only one car, tried and tried and tried and tried, and isn't it good to see it when it all starts to come together?
How British you are. What a wonderful philanthropic thought. I get you, everybody in the pit lane probably actually does feel that, but you know what they don't want is somebody who's maybe out of place popping up.
Yeah, taking points.
Well, not taking points so much, but maybe we know our competition from throughout the year. Suddenly get a spike, which is this lovely Jaguar. What's that all about? Yeah. And, you know, but we love it because isn't it great to see the Jaguar running competitively and hopefully running reliably all the way through?
I'm not convinced it's going to stay up at the point at the end as the road dries. I think it will start to lose places because that used to be the real Achilles heel, that sometimes it wouldn't even survive the bronze test without mechanical problems, but now it does look a lot more reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the difficulty is you've just got to get track time, whether it's testing or at a racetrack, and if you're having issues, mechanical or reliability issues, then you don't get the track time, and it's sort of a vicious circle. So how do you get to the position where you can actually get continuous running and then work forward and try and then find a more competitive pace from within the car?
Well, it's just gone second overall. The fastest of all now is this Ferrari of Morgan Moulin-Trafort. Now, this means, for the first time this year, really, we have a Ferrari in the Pro Cup. It's not an AF Corsa car, it's Jérôme Policon's Autosport Promotion team, but it's a crack team anyway. It's a good team. And Morgan Moulin-Trafort is a good French GT driver, underrated, but he's quick. This is another, to go back to your point about the spikes, about you know who your competition is, this is another car that could have a part to play in the race, and therefore, by taking points off people, an outcome in the championship.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you some indication of this car's coming into the pits, currently quickest overall, 2:07. This morning, in that free session we had, first free practice, fastest lap was a 1:55. Yeah. So we're 12 seconds away, and the reality is, because the conditions are literally, and you can see the Lamborghini going again slightly wide, coming through turns 4 and 5. The conditions are so inconsistent. They're drying all the time that one car could do one lap at a particular point, and then next lap.
We can now say. Walked past your own last week at Ossersleben as he was walking out of Audi's hospitality at the DTM weekend. Now, whether that was just out of interest or courtship within the group that they might move him into the DTM project, who knows?
Well, I mean, it's all part of the family. I mean, Lamborghini is owned by VW Audi.
Exactly, yeah.
And of course, Audi is part of that big family. And
going into Formula One, I read.
Well, I know where that story came from, and it is being denied in certain circles. But I feel there's an element of truth in it. Yes. So that's a little bit further down the road. But in the meantime, we've got VW Audi with Audi, we've got VW Audi with Bentley, we've got VW Audi with Lamborghini. The only thing missing really is a really representative Porsche, which is now part of that VW Audi family.
Exactly, because we've got a few in the AM Cup, haven't we, towards the rear of the grid. But yes, there is limited Porsche representation.
And of course, there's also the Bugatti Veyron Gran Turismo, which is being aired at the Frankfurt Motor Show, just a few kilometers down the road. And that, they reckon, would do 250 miles an hour on 4 segments of Le Mans.
Poof, blimey.
Brain damage.
Absolutely. Number 100 you've just seen off the road, which is the Ferrari that Thomas Hederman is at the wheel of. That will rejoin, hopefully, without any damage. So people cycling through this session. There it is. It gets away again. Henrik Hedman, apologies, not Thomas. Henrik Hedman gets going and sets off down towards turns 5 and 6 now to the next sequence. So fastest is Andy Soucek in Bentley 31. We've been banging on about its heritage number. Well, now it's gone to the top of the times with Jeroen Mul second, number 19 Lamborghini. Third is 21 Hubert Haupt, who knows his way around here. Hugely experienced driver is Hubert Haupt. Fourth, interestingly, number 99. Now, Steph Dusseldorp and Nico Bastien could win the Pro Cup. Their teammate for the weekend is Danny Juncadella, who could also have won it because he's on a different point score. He now can't win, but he can help them, if you're following me. And he has got the car to 4th fastest. There is Marchi Lee in the Audi that he shares with Sean Thong, or Wei Feng Thong, and Marcus Winkelhock. And that car run by Ernst Moser's Phoenix Racing team that's based just outside the circuit. Go out of the main gate, go left about half a kilometre up the road and you fall over it. Winkelhock's stuck in traffic, of course, behind the Mercedes there.
Yeah, it doesn't really want to put himself going offline. And again, you can see now coming down, quickest part of the racetrack, that little kink at what they call turn 12. It's just literally more than a squeeze the wrist. You can now see the track in certain parts getting much darker. Marcus Winkelhock had a look down the inside, but he knew that if he tried to get alongside in these conditions on the much damper part of the racetrack, he would have probably ended up overshooting. Now having a look up into turn 15 and getting a little bit pinched, but he holds the nose of the Audi and gains the ground and gains the traction off turn 15. And that was a good pass, forceful, but he made his presence known. And once he was there, he didn't, backwards and forwards. So tons of experience from Marcus Winkelhock.
That last corner always seems to be a bit of a nothing corner. It's not a proper hairpin where you can make a good overtake, like, say, the hairpin at Zandvoort, because it's a kind of hairpin. It's a bit of a funny corner.
It's like Budapest, final corner of Budapest, same kind of thing. It's it doesn't mean you haven't got a big break into it where you've got to slow the car down and make an acute turn. It's sort of you can choose the apex at any point of the corner you want.
What it does give you, though, because of that, is contact and therefore interruptions, which isn't always what you need either. Now, somebody else that's going very strongly at the moment is Wolfgang Reip, because he has just done an absolute best sector in the 23 Nissan, another of those cars pitching to win the Pro Cup.
I just wonder, has anybody yet really had the courage of their convictions to roll out a set of slicks? Because the more you look at these onboard shots, I mean, this here is way dry enough. Now, if you veer fractionally off, you'll get caught. But there is now, I think this is a very good transition point for anybody that might think about just finding out the switch over lap time. I mean, that's definitely dry, isn't it? For me, the majority of the circuit now is sufficiently dry, not dry, but sufficiently dry to really make that exercise worth investigation. And we will tell, I mean, just looking 206.8 from Andy Soucek.
I mean, the fact that people are doing purple sectors says the road is drying, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but we're not seeing number 7 Guy Smith fastest in 3rd sector in a 20. Curbing, of course, is the other thing you've got to be careful if you do want to go down that route, because the curbs will also retain a lot of the moisture, and water on the painted curb is never attractive. And there you can see that gentle S as they exit out of the quick turn 12, then cutting back to the right, then through the chicane and hard on the gas and getting good traction, good grip from the mid-engine Lamborghini. I suspect still on wet weather tires, but if there's no more rain in the sky, come in.
Gone quickest.
Yeah, he's gone quickest by, what, 0.8 of a second.
So the road continues to dry, but as John asks, when do you get to that crossover point? And Mull almost running out of road in the first corner.
I just wonder, has Bentley gone and done something? Because
Might be right.
to me, that's the way their team's going to think. They're going to think, what can we do and how can we learn it? So we've got a personal best in the first sector for Guy Smith.
And actually, the pit lane is getting busier all the time, isn't it? More and more people being shown as in the pits, suggesting they're about to go and try that slick set of tyres.
Yeah, I mean, it's the team that does it first, but then gives the rest of the information to the rest.
Yeah.
But Guy Smith using the curb heavily, coming out of turn 14, a lot of confidence from the driver to do that. So nothing special in the mid-sector. Let's see, the final sector was quick enough through at a 19.9, again a personal best. So Guy Smith remains in, where is he, down in 8th place. One more lap, set of slicks if that's what he's got on. Let's see whether then all of a sudden it just literally it'll light up our timing and scoring. It'll go purple, 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 and once that happens, then the whole pit lane will erupt. Time for slicks.
Yeah. Stefano Tagli has just gone second, and he was way back, number 2 Audi. Andy Soucek's done 2 purple sectors, and he's gone 3rd.
Well, I think Andy Soucek, again, in the Bentley, same car we're watching with Guy Smith. Well, this is Soucek we're watching now.
Yeah.
I mean, these. Now that is a slick tyre.
Yeah.
Definitely a
There's
slick
your
tyre.
evidence.
Oh, I tell you, that was a bit of tweak in the old seat belt as the back end stepped out like that. That's what
Tweak
you have to be
somewhere else.
aware of. That's what you've got to be prepared for. But, you know, good on you, Andy, for, you know.
Well, it was kind of working, because 2 absolute best on the previous lap, sector 2, sector 3. What's gone against him is partly traffic and partly the weather, the track conditions down at turn 1.
Yeah, turn 1, 2, and 3 are the dodgy bits of the race. So he just, you know, the tyre isn't sufficiently warm to give him that little bit of confidence, but you saw the reaction of what happens. It holds on, and you think you're getting grip, and then snap, oversteer, and the snap is so abrupt.
Here's the replay.
Yes, here we go.
Whoa.
Just, you've got a little bit of moisture. You can almost see the little bit of moisture coming off that left rear tyre. So Andy Soucek had to get out of the throttle, and a little bit of correction to keep the car from running too wide. But my money is on a set of slicks on car 31.
Well, he's pressing on again, isn't he? As he tries to terrorise the Dominic Schwager, Stephen Parov Ferrari out of the way. Parov at the wheel of it. Up the inside goes Andy Soucek. Then how's number 7 Bentley getting on? It's not lighting up the screens just yet.
And we did see that middle sector, because that the first sector is a very long sector, as we mentioned. Middle sector not quite so long.
Yeah, it's not going to
Purple in the middle sector.
No. Purple in the middle sector. Oh, sorry, from Soucek. Yeah, sorry, I was looking at Guy Smith. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, well, look at the Bentley.
Yeah. No, I was waiting for a Guy Smith time to light up the screen, but Soucek, up towards the timing line. So that's what we're after. And he goes quickest of all with an absolute best in the 3rd as well. Imagine how good that could have been if he hadn't lost the time in the first sector.
And flashing the lights because you've got traffic ahead. We're coming down the pit lane. So I think we've found the crossover point. It's a 2 minutes 6 seconds 0, whatever you want to call it.
So was Smith on slicks, or is he in for them now? We thought he
he's
might
in.
have been,
He's
but
in.
there's
I think
down the pit road now.
Soucek has been on slicks, I think.
Yeah.
Andy has still
He's
been
been the
the
pioneer.
So I think we'll find that car will be back on track with the set of. Now we'll watch what Soucek has done. Fastest second and third sector times. Fastest overall lap by it's only 0.025 of a second, nevertheless.
25 thousandths it is between Andy Soucek and Jeroen Mull. 3rd fastest is the Ferrari, number 20 of Tristan Vautier, the car that he's taken over from Morgan Moulin-Traffel. So that Ferrari in the mix. Still interesting as far as the race prospects are concerned. You can see the dry line is emerging. 40 minutes of the session still to go. As into the pit lane goes the Porsche from the AM class, the Attempto car, number 16 Ferrari heads towards the timing line. And the circuit's still very busy, even though people are bailing for slick tyres. Now, which of the Audis is that? Number 4, isn't it? The WRT Pro-Am class car. Peter Scotthorst at the wheel of it. So the pit lane now becomes a bit busier as people do go for slicks, and then we'll start to see whether and by how much the times are going to come down. At the moment, the best is still modest. It's a 2:06, but below 2 minutes on a fully dry track is what you can anticipate.
Yeah, and again, Andy Soucek, fastest middle sector time on this lap. It's the first part of the racetrack that's the difficult bit for a car that's on slick tyres, and he's just a tenth or more down on those just directly behind him, who still are probably on wet weather tyres. So Andy Soucek will come across the start-finish line very shortly, and I would expect to see a further improvement. No, he's gone in the pit lane, so well, has he confounded us? Has he gotten into is he still actually on wet weather tyres? All that build-up, all that wise knowledge, maybe he's still on wets.
Unless it's to download some data to the team. Maybe. Didn't look like it was on wet, I agree with you, but you never know. Right, down the pit road comes Tristan Vautier, who is fourth fastest. We've had a couple of cars not yet venture out, one of which is Dennis Anderson's Ferrari, and the other is the Motorbase Aston Martin. And I suspect that might be that they don't want to go out on a soaking circuit. They'll let everybody else dry it and then go out at the end. Renat Salikov has taken over 333, as you can see, and that car is 39th. 39th mires you absolutely in jeopardy for the first couple of corners, doesn't it?
No, for the first 20 minutes. I mean, literally what we saw last year were cars that were out of position for the reasons we've discussed. And, I mean, I'm talking about front-running cars normally, and you just don't have any momentum. You are literally almost, on the opening couple of laps on some corners, having to come to a standstill. With the volume of cars we've got on the racetrack, it is extremely difficult. You've got to be patient. And I mean, I think it was almost up until the first stop in a 6-hour event, six stops, that it took them almost an hour to find what I would call their natural position within the field.
But come tomorrow, less time available, and of course a limited amount of time between qualifying and the race. Qualifying coming in the morning, weather permitting. So if anybody's in strife in that, then it's going to eat into the day. The Mercedes you're looking at, Hubert Haupt to the wheel of it, pounding on, and that car is currently 12th fastest. Renat Salikov has been a very good addition to the Pro-Am ranks this year. We've started to see what he's capable of. Last year he was overshadowed a bit by errant co-drivers, but this year he's illustrated his speed, and Monza was, I know the BOP was kinder there to the Ferraris and elsewhere potentially, but he's been a very, very good driver indeed this year within Pro-Am.
Down, there are little improvements coming. I mean, people are slightly out of position, and others
quicker.
Yeah.
So there, look, the Mercedes, the Black Falcon, another team based just up the road, going to the top of the times. Local knowledge on setup, maybe.
Yeah, but that's a significant step. And Haupt has gone 1.3 seconds quicker than Soucek had done. So, and again, track improving. Has Hubert Haupt used that local knowledge? Living in this area, you're going to know what's going to happen.
Well, a yellow in the first sector, so that Mercedes arena, that's still the wettest part of the road, has caught out somebody as others go over the timing line. Michael Lyons has just got his Ferrari up to 8th fastest, the very quick young British driver, quick in historics, quick in modern racing. Not everybody makes the switch as easily between the two. Michael's one of the exceptions that has, actually. Ollie Bryant's probably another.
Yeah, 75 Audi's got quickest overall. So again, 2 minutes 4.3, 3/10 of a second. Oh, and
that's the Dusseldorf car.
Is that Stepp or is that
Danny Juncadella?
Danny. What have you been doing, Danny?
Well, he's facing the wrong way.
Coming out of turn 1.
Yeah.
Maybe he's come out of the pits and slicks and just, inexperience.
You're right, pit out, yes. So he's done that. Good spot. And Danny Juncadella, nephew of Luis Sala, gets back on track. Mercedes DTM racer. So hopefully that'll get the yellow flag out of the way. There, the Audi's almost tripping over themselves.
Yeah, there's the quickest car currently on track, 75.
Frederic Verviche.
Freddie Verviche. So, just making his way, threading his way through the field. And of course, once you get the grip that you get from a slick tyre over those that are still running around and thinking it's too wet to put those slicks on. So this is recovering, and what's he done? is going through turn. Oh, there we go, there we go, there we go. Oh, dear me. You know, these kids.
Leisure.
Yeah, well, he's not even a kid, he's about 23, isn't he now? But, you know, when the tyre is cold and it gets moisture on it, and a little bit of momentum, a little bit of whoops, so here we go. Good for us.
It is, and Daniel Gudea, in fairness, isn't a rocket kind of driver. He's not somebody that you often see throwing cars off the road, so he'll perhaps on his return to the pit lane. 34 there, which had a puncture in the free practice this morning, getting in the way of Michael Lyons.
Oh, dear me, was that contact? I think it might have been.
Oh, that's definitely contact.
That's contact, but I think there was a little bit of contact at the rear of the Ferrari. Just caught it literally as it was spearing off the track. And again,
that's
wet
Matt Griffin.
grass and even wet gravel didn't do an awful lot to down two major attacks of the tyre barriers.
Matt Griffin at the wheel.
The Matster, I tell you what, Matster's posts on Twitter tonight will be a bit more circumspect, and I'm sure he'll want to find out who it was that was responsible for tipping him over.
Again, Matt is not somebody that flings cars off racetracks, so...
No, I'm certain, I'm certain. I just caught the very beginnings of it, and I was certain there's another car involved.
Don't forget, it's been off once. It caused the red flag just as we came on air. Matt Griffin is OK, but we'll be very nonplussed about that. Red flag as well. Session stopped. It was the Team Russia BMW, and... Yes.
Oh, yeah, just simply... I mean, right up the back of the fair and square in the right rear quarter, and never nice to be going backwards and not knowing what you're going to be bumping into. So the BMW guilty as charged on that one. There we're going to do it again, just to make sure that we don't point blame, and cuts from left to try and get himself under the Ferrari, and just simply misjudges Matt Griffin's braking point. I mean, it doesn't take a heavy contact.
No.
In these conditions, once a car goes, then it's just going to continue until there's something there to arrest it. And that happened to be the tyre barrier.
Leo Machitsky was in the BMW, according to the timing screen, and look at the way the barrier deforms there.
There's an access point in the barrier there to let vehicles be removed. So it's always the worst part of a barrier to get at the point where the access is open.
So it's not just the car out of the way, it's also the need to repair the barriers that we've had the session stopped for. But again, look at the way the barrier deforms, and damage to the front, to the back.
And one of the corner workers was really, had to get himself out of the way, because not just the car, but also anything that might be being shredded on the back of the car. There is the Irishman. There is the red flag. So that will be about 5 or 10 minutes probably.
Yeah.
Matt looks, other than probably not very happy about what took place.
Something like that must come as a real shock, because you're driving your rate, you've passed the car, and then suddenly out of nowhere there's this bang in the back.
Correct.
You don't see anything coming, and not only are you launched off, but you then get the damage to the car as well. So a big shock to Matt Griffin. That's the car that's already won Pro-Am in the championship, so they are here without too much pressure, but both Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron like to win their class, and they don't want to be sitting on the sidelines with a broken car.
Well, and Matt's a factory Ferrari driver. I mean, he's there to do the best for the company, or for the owner of the car, and Duncan Cameron are, a really talented gentleman driver.
Yeah. He's getting on to be an AM Plus almost now, because he does so many races, doesn't he? I mean, at Monza, he turned up Sunday morning and second in the class. He'd already had a 4-hour race the day before at Silverstone, hadn't he, in another championship. So this is how we look at the moment while the session is stopped and the multicoloured Ferrari from AF Corsa is retrieved. But it might also be that the damage to the barrier needs sorting out as well. But there was no messing about with that one. It was a stop. And Leo Machitsky, I think, has a case to answer, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He's going to be in front of the beak. And you have to explain what happened. I mean, he will say, it wasn't my fault, he braked too early. The normal, I'm assuming that would be the normal reaction from a driver. Matt Griffin, to me, just did what he was normally doing. The problem was that the car struck a bit of the barrier that's unprotected initially. That's why there's damage to that Armco barrier. So it's been sufficiently bent in that they may want to attend to that. Which would then, we've got 28.5 minutes or so of the session remaining. They could probably get that replaced fairly quickly, but it would take, I would think, minimally 10 minutes to do so. There's the Ferrari being dragged, and not a pretty sight. It's in gear, of course.
Well, some of the circuit staff I've just seen leave the pit lane to go and have a look at the barrier to assess that. It's not just the Armco, it's also the posts behind it, I suppose, that might also need repairing. So it was certainly a high-speed impact.
There you can see the marks on the barrier there.
Yeah,
Just simply, and that doesn't give you the full picture there. You can see that's the full picture, and that's why those two corner workers, they were running. I mean, that was a heavy impact. Remember, the car weighs the best part of 1,200 kilograms. The kinetic energy involved, what, double the weight of the car in effect. So you got something like a 2,500 pound or kilogram car hitting the barrier at maybe 50, 60 miles an hour backwards.
And even if you were prepared for it at that speed and on a damp circuit, there's not much Matt Griffin could do about slowing the car down.
I mean, everything, even if the track where the contact initially took place, once the car's out of control and going backwards, there's nothing you're going to do. And of course, the grass and the gravel are still very, very wet. So the cars, it's just like a super lubricated highway.
So they can see the problem. The barrier and the supports behind it push back. So the Armco may need replacing, but the posts behind might need re-securing before the session can go live. So there might not be very much running left here.
That's a judgment that's going to have to be made by the clerk of the course, the race director. And it's difficult to tell you. I mean, if you left it unprotected and something happened, the problem is it's very close to the end of that barrier, wherein you've got the access for the corner workers, the marshals, to take a car away. And I think they're going to have to do something to replace that before they will release the cars on track.
I think you're right. Leo Machitsky, by the way, is under investigation for the incident. Not a huge surprise.
I think he should put his hands up and say, guilty as charged, go.
Yeah.
And again, you can see a little bit of rain falling to the right of your screen. That's off the circuit. There is the new barrier. Very efficient here at the Nürburgring. I mean, they're getting all this stuff is laid out, and now being. Where is it? I don't know. It's going. It's come. Where I don't know quite from where it's come from, because it's come against the flow of the traffic, because that is not the natural flow. So it's been in somewhere inside the loop, and there is the Ferrari and damage to the right rear corner. All the gravel bit dragged, so the wing looking very sad. It's the right rear corner. That looks to me that's going to need the most attention, but the whole car will have to be squared up again before it would be ready for track. It'll not be ready tonight, of course, but for tomorrow morning's 8:30 start. Could be a long night for the team.
I mean, they could and may even choose to skip qualifying altogether and just work to the start of the race, because they've won the class in the championship. It's a 3-hour race. Start at the back, you're out of trouble. Give yourself more working time.
Arguably, you could do that as a way of looking at it. I would be surprised if that was the direction that they would choose to go down.
Very impressed with the barrier repair team. Straight on the case at Ossersleben last weekend. It was 2 hours virtually between one accident and the barrier being repaired to start the next race, and that made people's flights home a bit tense, I tell you.
Wouldn't be happy about that.
But here, the team straight on it.
Yeah, I think you pointed out it's the support post. Its location hasn't been compromised. Was the initial impact on the barrier where that support post is, or on either side? I mean, little issues that really are of no importance whatsoever to our audience, but are critical when they start to remove. So they'll have power tools. They've got a generator in the back of the, it's like a Unimog, one of those Mercedes-Benz Unimog vehicles that are absolutely amazing. Go anywhere, any time of the day or night. So it'll not be long for them to get the barrier, damaged barrier, removed. No, it will be, can they get it all realigned properly?
Indeed. But I mean, they're working on this within what it feels like within 5 minutes of the red flag coming out. There's absolutely no messing around, has there? There's not been a committee looking at it and staring and scratching their chins thinking, well, we might be able to, we might not. They just got on with it.
No shop stewards, that's why.
That's right. I'll tell you, it's a contrast from another circuit I was at, so it's very impressive, this. Very impressive.
Yeah, and that's the professionalism of a circuit like Nürburgring. I mean, this is a Class 1, a Category 1 racetrack. You couldn't get any higher than that. And of course, they have to have in place all these bits of barrier, tire bales, spare tire bales, and also the infrastructure and the equipment. I mean, this Unimog truck to be on call. I mean, the guy might have been sitting having a coffee and having a ciggy or something. talking or watching whatever he was watching on screen, and all of a sudden it's like being a light boatman. You're on call 24/7, and if you're cutting up somebody's beef of 4 rib of beef or something, and you're a lifeboat man, you've got to drop it and rush to the lifeboat house, and it's a bit like that for these guys.
Well, fair play to them because they've responded very rapidly, and look, the work's going on, but as we say, it's the barrier you can replace. The session will not be resumed due to the repairs to be made after barrier damage, so the session will not be restarted.
In a way, I'm sorry, because teams that hadn't made the transition onto slick tires have lost out, and other teams that were going through their normal process of whatever we like to do are going to lose out. But the judgment is in the interest of the safety of the circuit and the competitors that to do this job properly. And look above us. I mean, that may or may not be ready to just to deposit another zillion gallons of rain on the circuit. I mean, it makes. I mean, JMR, was it Turner? What were his initials? I can't remember now. But the great British artist Turner, who painted all those wonderful seascapes and skyscapes. He would be in seventh heaven if he had got a sky like that.
Well, this then is how they looked, and suppose that it rains heavily in the morning and we can't go to qualifying and this with a grid, it would be fascinating. Might be some penalties flying around, but in terms of the times they've done, Mercedes, thanks to whom it helped, the quickest, ahead of the Audi of Frederic Vervisch, and then the Harold Primat 84 Bentley. Harold Primat's farewell tour, this. He's not going to continue his racing career after this weekend, so he will be hopeful to go out on a high ahead of the 31 Bentley, then Lamborghinis both in the top 6. And you scroll through.
I tell you what, I'll take that starting grid.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I mean, if we've got to do a deal right now, let's do it.
Well, Alain Adam is the race director. A bottle of whatever you fancy, Alain, we'll go with that. Also shows over the course of the session how people yo-yoed up the order. Lawrence Vantor ending up 16th, the Jaguar ending up 18th, and the Von Ryan McLaren, well, 58, the Rob Bell car, down in 23rd, but the session not to restart. 55 cars in total, 2 never went out even, and if they were thinking we'll bide our time to the drier section.
Alvaro Perez.
Oh yeah, 34th.
I mean, let it go. Let's have this grid.
Yeah.
What a cracking 3 hours we're going to have on Sunday.
It's almost like drawing numbers at random out of a bag, isn't it, to get this grid? It's been great.
More chance of winning the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Leo Machitsky is being summoned to race control, and we have qualifying tomorrow from 8:30. We'll look forward to that, and we'll see what the weather has in store for us for the final round of the Blancpain Endurance Series tomorrow morning from the Nürburgring. From John Watson and David Addison. For now, bye-bye.